like the economic sector, I'm seeing a lot of what preceded the economic collapse in Bulgaria, the hyperinflation of Bulgaria. The reason why they had hyperinflation was this quantitative easing. They were injecting money into the economy. And so that's been happening in overdrive in this
Yes.
economy. So,
Hyperdrive, you might say.
exactly. So that concerns me a lot. Seeing that the economy didn't collapse. So I know a lot of people are nervous about the state of the economy. And they think that this is the United States, nothing horrible is going to happen here. Well, nothing happened, nothing horrible in the big picture happened in Bulgaria either. People still live, there's still a country, right, called Bulgaria. But that doesn't mean that the lives weren't destroyed, financially speaking, and wealth wasn't eroded. And so maybe something big might happen and the United States will still continue to be, as I hope and wish, but that doesn't mean that individuals are not going to have a hard time financially for a period of time or forever as a result of that.
So, what are you doing, if you don't mind sharing? And you don't have to.
Um,
It's
yeah,
but how has that changed your perspective and what you're doing for yourself? Because you also mentioned retirement.
yes. So I've personally been, um, when I first found your channel, it felt like a very ballsy move to liquidate your retirement and take it out of the system. I was like, whoa, that is so original. I never thought of that. And then I've been like, for the whole year, I've been mulling that over and thinking, I think getting the money out as soon as possible is probably a smart move. And so I've been converting my savings into precious metals. I've been talking to someone at
Hidden
ITM,
very well and not in your home.
not in my home.
Right. We just want to
And I
make that
haven't
point
converted
for
a
anybody
lot.
that haven't
No,
tuned in.
no, it's not. It's not worth breaking in for sure. But I've started to liquidate my assets in my retirement account because just in the past few weeks there's been major downturn, and so I feel like that's like living on borrowed time. That the retirement money is living on borrowed time. And so my plan is to eventually take the money, all of my retirement money out, um, and maybe leave just some because I'm not like, I guess I haven't gotten like mentally to the point of getting
It's
all
hard
the
to
money out of the
believe.
system. It's very hard, even as an economist, even with all of that,
Well,
life experience.
didn't the
It's still,
Bulgarian stock market raise as the currency was going into hyperinflation? Didn't that go up?
I believe so, but I wasn't in the market. I was a student at the time
Right.
with barely any
But
savings.
but it did. So people rush into the market, which is denominated in the lev, and the
Yes.
markets go up, and they think, "Isn't this
Oh,
great?
yeah.
I'm making money." But the purchasing power value of the underlying currency, which is the only thing you can convert it
Only thing that
into,
matters. Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so you also talked about Cyprus. And
Mhm.
I've talked a lot about Cyprus over the years. Very interesting how they tested out, you know, taking bank accounts with and without the deposit insurance scheme and the retirement plans. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
Right. So as now I'm thinking about how best to protect my retirement savings, that case has been in my mind a lot because what happened in Cyprus, to save the country from a financial crisis, the government negotiated, I think, $13 billion deal with the IMF and other European banks. And according to this, they would be bailed out. But what was the catch? Any accounts over 100,000 euros, which may seem like a big amount, but it's not if you've worked all your life for that.
Right.
It's about what now, $110,000. Any amount above that was basically taken. stolen, really. And it lost about half of its value, and it was converted into shares into the bank, the failing bank.
Sounds
Okay, so
like a
in other
deal to
words,
me.
people
What's
were
the problem?
forced to buy shares into a failing bank. That's a great investment, right? How, imagine your life savings going into that deal. And so there is a precedent, and more than one, of governments basically taking over retirement money. It's just, I feel like, especially, it's just too
Easy.
tempting.
Right, it is, because that all that wealth is sitting there.
Sitting there.
There
Yeah.
is no trustee that's going to say, "Oh, government, no, we're going to protect our clients," because basically they take your wealth, and then this is not true in every case, and you'd have to look at the individual documents. But in many cases, they get to use your equity as collateral and borrow. It's not really your equity once you make that deposit. You have to read the fine print. You know, you're loaning the bank that money, and so you're a creditor just like everybody else, which is why they could easily take that.
Right.
The other thing about Cyprus that I found really interesting, and we could, Edgar, would you find that graph? And if you can just remind me. But I came across this graph that showed like the other European banks and German banks, and how once Cyprus became part of the European Union, right? They made all these massive deposits, but then they started getting out, you know, like exactly. Whereas the general population, they just keep their money in there. It's sticky. You know, do you think they knew something?
Yeah. It's like, so in my experience so far, my life experience in these countries with very shaky economies and big financial disasters happening, is that it's very hard to trust the system. Mm-hmm. And it's the small people that get to carry the bag at the end. Mm-hmm. So we need to look for ways to protect the wealth that we've created in that do not involve this, that does not involve the system. Exactly. Or at least a portion of that wealth, if we're not comfortable with all of it.
You know, I have my mantra, which you're probably familiar with: food, water, energy security, barterability, wealth preservation, community, and shelter. Yeah. So if you look at that, is there, I mean, if you were able to get yourself positioned in each one of those areas, and under the food, I always kind of think of medicine for anybody that has a chronic illness, because what happened to medicine during this period of time? You couldn't get it, yeah. Right? So, you know, if somebody actually executed that strategy, which I personally have, you know, do you think that would, do you think that would really offer enough protection? Or is there something else that we should add to it? Or is it too much? Or what do you think about that?
I think that would be a lot of protection. So for example, growing up, all houses in Albania did have a little garden and some chicken, so we wouldn't go hungry. But those gardens were eliminated over time. And so that self-reliance was basically taken over or sort of like taken away little by little. We ended up with a generation that didn't know or considered it backwards to have chickens in the backyard. So I do believe that having some source of food that doesn't depend on stores or anywhere else is definitely, I just wonder, like, to what extent self-reliance is possible in the United States, because there's been many more generations here. Okay, I did grow up with backyard chicken because my grandmother had them, but my husband, who's American, didn't. Right? How many generations in the US have grown without knowing how to, right? I really I'm enjoying the trend of seeing people plant